Hey everybody, Tim here with today's episodes of Enterprise Season 4, Episodes 4, 5, and 6, Borderland, Cold Station 12, and the Augments. I had mentioned before how I look up a lot of the episodes prior to actually starting the season. Like when I'm in Season 3, I'm already looking at Season 4. And so I do look up like how many two-parter, how many three-parters are there? Especially coming out of Deep Space Nine, where like the last 9 episodes were all one arc, the final chapter and stuff. And then like especially again with Deep Space Nine, where they started throwing in these like curveballs where it's like, oh, this is a two-parter, but the episodes are not like the same name. It's not like Borderland Part 1, Borderland Part 2, Borderland Part 3. No, they're all different titles, but it's still a three-parter. And so while I'm like, I also like to keep track of how many videos I've done. And so like I was trying to like keep track, and I'm like, okay, so by the time I get to this point, I should be this far. And so I was like, so what happens? Because technically like all of Season 3 is a 24-part episode. I honestly probably could have done a 24-part episode review and just been like, this sucks, don't watch it. That's really mean, I'm sorry. I'm sick, it happens. But I didn't. I actually went through, and there were a couple of them that were in there, and I was like, you know, maybe I should do these as like at least groups of 2. I didn't, because that's not how they're presented. But I did see that this one was, and I was like, so I'm going to do the math and like, where should I be and stuff. But what happens if I get there and I'm like, yeah, they're briefly connected, but I wouldn't say they're a 3. No, I was wrong. This is definitely a trilogy episode thing. And what's interesting is that like in the first like 7 minutes, they actually say like, oh, he's in the Borderland. He worked at Cold Station 12. He helped the Augments. And I was like, oh shit, there's all 3 titles right there. So, okay, we're definitely connected. And then the to be continued and stuff like that. Thought it was really great. Overall, it's a 3-part episode. I liked it. I thought it was really interesting. I liked a lot of like the shout outs, a lot of the references, a lot of the characters, stuff like that. I thought it was really interesting. That being said, there was enough filler material in there. You could have cut it out and gone down to just a 2-parter pretty easily. Like it didn't need a lot of the stuff in there that it had, but it's fine. It's a 3-parter and it was good. So like usual, kind of start at the top, work my way down, and then go through the references. Like I said, because there was so much filler, by the time I got to the end of the 3rd part, I was fading quick. So most of the stuff that I thought were interesting was in the first episode. Because I always feel like the first episode starts really strong. And that could be because I'm just like into it. I'm like, this is great. And then by the time I get to the 3rd episode, I'm like, just can we go to the next episode, please? And so like, if you notice, especially if you guys watch like my Doctor Who videos, like that's how it starts, especially if they're like 6 episodes long and audio. Like I start strong and then I fade quick. So for this one, J.G. Hetzler, great actor, returns as the Klingon captain. Go figure. Like, he's a great actor, and he's played so many great characters in Star Trek. Like, he can do other things besides Klingons. This is like, what, the 3rd, maybe 4th Klingon he's played. At least his 2nd one in Enterprise alone. So I was like, no, I don't need this. Watching them getting taken out by the humans, right away, I was not surprised that it's the Augments, and you could kind of feel just by their clothing and stuff, the connections to Khan and stuff like that. So I was like, okay, so this is actually going to be a pretty badass story. I'm pretty excited for it. Eric, I think is how his name was, Soong, is in this episode, played by the amazing Brent Spiner. And, you know, I'll be honest with you, like, I love Brent Spiner, I love Data. He fell off in this episode. Like, it was one of those, like, I don't know if it was just him, like, overshining everybody else around him or what it was, but something about Brent Spiner being in this. Like, I loved him and I loved his character, but it just felt weird. Kind of like if you had, like, this takes place before Discovery. So kind of like if you took Brent Spiner and you put him in Discovery, you're just going to be like, this feels awkward. Like, I like it, but it's weird, and I don't know why. So I thought that was kind of weird. So there's no official, like, lineage here, but Eric Soong is presumably, later on we'll get to it, the great-grandfather of Noonien Soong, which would make him the great-great-grandfather of Data, and technically the great-great-great-grandfather of Lull. So that's kind of interesting. I don't know how far I could keep going with that, so I'll just stop. But I liked it. So he plays this brilliant scientist who is also batshit crazy. Go figure. Like, that's just something in the Soong family line, looking at Noonien and other stuff like that. So, let's see. We see T'Pol come back, and he's like, you were Trip, the whole relationship between T'Pol and Trip. And he's like, you were only on Vulcan for 2 weeks. Like, how was your honeymoon? And she just doesn't want to talk about it. She's like, nope, not going there. And then I was like, okay, so I'm digging this relationship. I almost think like she faked the marriage or something like that. So we'll have to see where that goes. I loved the whole like underground like ring, the crime ring going on, where they're like bargaining and they're selling and trading people and stuff. This, I believe, is the first time we've seen Orions since the original series. I mean, it wasn't, but I feel like you saw like Orion slave girls in every other episode of the original series. It was not that common, but it felt that way because Kirk slept with everybody. I don't think we saw any male Orions until we actually got to the animated series, actually. So this is the first time we've seen, I could be wrong, but the first time I remember seeing male Orions. So I thought that was kind of cool. And like, I know in Deep Space Nine, I think they talked about their Orion Syndicate a lot. I can't remember now. But I love the scene where he like picks up T'Pol and is like showing her to the crowd, and the actress is just like, why is this my life? Like, how much are they paying me? And it was great. I was cracking up. It shouldn't have been great, but it was actually really funny. Kind of the same thing where Soong goes to escape, and he's like using his handcuffs to like hold onto the bar. And then Archer just like clicks the button, unhooks him, and he drops. I was like, this is great. I loved it. And then the whole line with the augments about like, we have 5 times your strength, we have double your intelligence, stuff like that, I believe is an exact quote from Khan. Like, I feel like that's something he said either in the Wrath of Khan or Space Seed or one or the other. But he says, I'm pretty sure, we have 5 times your strength. Most of part 2 was not that interesting to me. Like, just the whole, like, Archer finds the augment without super strength, and then he dies at the end. I was like, okay, so that's, whoop, no character development for you. And then most of the stuff is just the whole bloodborne pathogens, watching the guy die, stuff like that was really hard. Like, it was really interesting, but it was pretty intense to take in. Most of this whole episode was just to kind of show Soong disagreeing with the augment in charge, like his son and stuff like that. That's most of what this episode is used for, and you can kind of tell. It felt like it. Because by the time we go into the 3rd episode, that's when the augments are taking over, and they basically cast Soong aside, because they're like, you're just a lonely mortal. The Briar Patch, I felt, was not needed. I'm not 100% sure if that was supposed to be the Briar Patch from Insurrection or not. If it's not, it was like a really poor choice to throw in there, because it instantly kind of took me at like, is it supposed to be the same thing? Like, would they go there? Either way, I did love mentioning the Botany Bay, and anytime somebody says Botany Bay, I can't help but do like a Chekhov impression of like the scene from the Wrath of Khan when he like looks at the belt buckle and he's like, Botany Bay! Like, I love it. So as soon as they started doing it, I started saying it back to him. And then just bringing up Khan. Like, I know Khan was brought up one time in The Next Generation and one time in Deep Space Nine as well. And so it was great to see him be brought up in Enterprise for a 3rd time. So stuff like that was great. The leaving the hostages was kind of interesting, where he like drops the little shuttle pod in there and he's like, okay, save the hostage or come and get me. And Archer actually goes for the hostage. You know, I hate Archer so much. I actually expected him to be like, fuck the hostage, and go after Soong, because that's kind of what we've gotten from him. With like they left the cowboy people, they stole the warp coil, which we never got follow up on either one of those groups of people. But so I assumed he would have been like, nope, forgetting the hostages, we got to go after those people. But they didn't, so I was actually pretty surprised by that. And then, of course, by the time we get to the end, everybody lives happily ever after, and it wraps up pretty quick for me, just taking out the augments and throwing Soong back in jail. I didn't actually like the final line where he's like, I should look into cybernetics. Like, I won't be able to do it. It'll take a generation or 2. Like, that's kind of where it becomes his great-grandson, or his grandson would be Noonien Soong. So, but overall, like, I was just sitting there expecting him to be like, patronic brain, like something. And I was just like, no, just stop. Like, I didn't need the cybernetics. But overall, it was what it is. It was actually pretty good. It was great to see Brent Spiner again in Star Trek. And after coming out of the third season, this is more of what I had expected from Enterprise. So, for those who have seen this 3-part episode, what did you guys think about the whole storyline? What did you think about seeing Orions? What did you think about seeing a Soong once again? What did you think about seeing Augments once again? Go ahead, let me know what you guys thought, and I will see you guys next time for another 3-part story, The Forge, The Awakening, and Ki Shiar.